Everything is happening through these screens.
How are we getting the most out of that person?
I want to see this thing grow long term.
Amazing story. You have such a unique perspective on that.
Schedule a 2-week vacation.
I applaud those models.
Undervalue.
Secure your digital footprint as well.
Why were they even put in place in the first place?
Only the most adaptable survive. Let's get to the leaders list. Marketing doesn't usually fail because of lack of effort. It fails because of misalignment, too much activity, not enough conversion. So that's why building a marketing engine that actually converts is on the leaders list. And so is Kristina Witmer. Kristina is the CEO of Witmer Group, and they help businesses move beyond impressions into action. And they do that alignment between brand, audience, and experience that actually drives results. So if your marketing looks good, but doesn't really move the needle, this one's for you. I'm Bryon Morrison. Let's get to the leaders list. Okay, Kristina Witmer, president of Witmer Group. Thank you for joining us on the leaders list today.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
So Kristina, I know most organizations are struggling with how do we make advertising and marketing really work for me in an SMB where I don't have endless resources and endless budget, but I know that you do a lot of work with those organizations.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be the thing that they're going to want to add to their leaders list. But before we do that, let's learn about your own leaders list. So tell us a little bit about the Witmer Group.
Okay, absolutely. So personally, I started off in advertising agencies. So I worked at large agencies, which meant we got to deal with these huge companies. And, at the same time, the internet was coming up in different ways. Social media was coming up onto the forefront. And so what we were seeing was old school agency approaches where there was all these layers of management and conversations and requirements. And I just saw at that point even how fast marketing was moving and how fast things were picking up. You still do these sort of annual plans, but it's so much different. Like having these quarterly campaigns and shifts, you could just sort of see it with social media and the internet and stuff like that. So I got frustrated. A woman I worked with as well, we were sort of, collaborating. We decided to jump off and start our own agency. So that lasted about 3 years and sort of a lot of trial and error, some other things. And then I shifted and pivoted and went to Witmer Group as a sole owner. And so that's been 15 years and definitely have seen a lot of, it's crazy when I start to think about it, but definitely seen a lot of shifts from what you're focused on. And with small businesses, we're always teaching people but there's these buzzwords that people start using and you could tell they're not exactly sure what SEO really is or what things are. And so a lot of it's education and bringing the clients with us. So.
Yeah. Well, and so when you went out and you went on your own, you had worked in a big agency environment, like you said. So it is pretty different. So Witmer Group, when you talk about marketing, that's a great big span, right? Especially in SMBs. Where does Witmer Group specialize?
So, and I don't know that it was always the case for this, but we specialize in looking at marketing from a sales enablement, a sales alignment perspective. And I find that when you speak that language, it really stands out to an owner, to a president, to a CEO, because that's, a lot of times you'll see companies have a sales function and then sort of this sales/marketing person, but they're really not ever doing marketing. So when you start talking about marketing from that perspective, I think it makes a big difference. So that's it. How do we align with sales to support the pipeline early stage throughout? How can we build the referrals and really just look at that piece holistically?
Yeah, got it. A friend of mine said you save the shoe leather. Mm-hmm. You help the people that are going out and doing all the calls, but you lay the foundation so they don't waste their time.
Right.
So, okay, well, that makes perfect sense. So tell me a little bit about your organization now, and specifically as we start to talk about the growth stage, 15 years in, how would you describe the growth stage that you're in today?
Yeah, so now it's definitely very different from when it started with, because Even when I first started the partnership, we understood that retainers made sense and are needed so that you can have this strategic long-term thinking about where you're going with a client. It also allows you to build the right team so that you can prepare for that growth, right? So I think when you force sort of these retainer conversations and understanding of what's happening over a year, 2 years, you're elevating the conversation so that the client knows. I mean, it's just, I always want to work with people who respect the fact that they want me to be in business 2 years from now. Like, they don't want to talk about, is this $20? Is this, and I'm not saying it's not important to show ROI and the money and the spend, but you want people who are invested in you as a company too. And then you start building camaraderie. You want them to grow so that you get other business and referrals. I mean, it's really a very logical, smart thing when you start thinking about it. But, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this at some point, but over the course of time, I've seen in the last few years, people skipping the brand, I think. And it's not just that
you mean their own brand, not paying enough attention to and establishing that?
Skipping like the love and the attention to it, or even just understanding what it is. I mean, because you have to know who you're talking to, what you stand for, what your key points are, and then make sure everyone, sales, whoever, is speaking the same language. Otherwise, you're wasting a lot of time and money.
See, I think that's an interesting point, Kristina, that we should talk about, because a lot of people, when they hear, they don't give enough love to the brand, they go, well, it's hard to measure love.
Yeah.
But I actually think you just nailed it. There is an expediency, there is efficiency, there is clarity, there is improvement in culture. Like, when you do go through that process of understanding the brand, it really does give quantifiable outcomes, right?
Yes. And sometimes when I don't hear any conversation about it, I think, well, are you just testing this and then you're going to move on to something else? Sometimes I don't know, but it's if you think about, and this all ties together. So people were talking about marketing, and I talk about building quality content that you can repurpose with a sort of honing in on very key messages. 3 message points, talk about it in different ways, share it in different ways, and build quality stuff you can repurpose. Because if you think about all the ways someone interacts with your brand, they do a Google search, they might see your Google My Business pictures. People skip that all the time, right? But that's just an impression I saw. Did I see an old logo? Did I see something, like that is just a brief moment, an eyeball to establish trust, respect, and all these things. So before the sales conversation, during the sales conversation, that brand stuff, I just think there's this huge checklist of things to make sure you've got it. And once you do it, it really does help over time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's like foundational, right? Those are the basic things that if you don't have that in place, when the salesperson goes out, you are eroding trust.
Yeah.
And so, do you have like a set asset checklist that you go through when you get started with companies to help them kind of think through, like, hey, if you've been around for 5 years, like these are assets that we know have to be out there?
Yeah, we definitely do. We work from that. I mean, I'm very process oriented, so I like to understand what we're trying to do and where we're going. And then I like to build a process that my team knows that we can all, divvy out and participate in, and then we can look and improve from that. So I'm huge with the process when it comes to that, whether it's content promotion, checklist, or these things, playbooks that we work from. So that's a big part of it for me.
So, Kristina, that talks a little bit about going back to you and Witmer Group. How much time do you put into process, playbooks, communication among staff, training? Because you've been around for a while. When did that kind of thing kick in for you?
I would actually say maybe it was 4 years ago. I've always been a process person and set things, but I think I got more organized because I started realizing if I ever want someone to take over things that I do now, I'm going to have to start documenting them. And there's a lot of great ways, right? Steps, Loom videos for quick how-tos, and then it doesn't have to be anything special. It could be using Google and in some kind of management program, but it's I think it's very important to start documenting that, because then what happens for me is when I see someone else on my team do it too, I can also see what they missed maybe. And I used to have, last year I had a Post-it note on my large monitor that said 80% of something done by someone else is better than 100% done by me, something like that. Like, stop, like, let people learn, let people fail, let people grow, because otherwise I'm not going to get anywhere. So it's important for me to see how they interpret it. And I learned too, like, the world is changing so fast. The internet is changing, marketing, AI, all these things. So I've got to allow other people to see it differently so that we don't get left behind. So,
yeah. And so what's on your leaders list today, Kristina? What are the things that you're focused on and trying to get done, like in the next 3 to 6 months, that are pressing?
Yeah. So for me, AI is on everybody's list, but AI goes to me with process and making sure, I was on a chat with someone recently and they were talking about how AI should extend 10x all the people on my team, versus, 8 years ago, it was like thinking about who you're going to add to the team, which kind of makes me sad because I love growing a team. I love that experience, but it's definitely, for the last year and a half been looking at what AI tools can we use? How can they be, as simple as taking we work with Gemini a lot because we like workspaces, but we use other ones as well, Copilot, and they're all out there. But having siloed places where our client goals are and content pillars and things like that, so that we can quickly work to, okay, social content, what are we looking for? Brainstorming ideas. These are little assistants for us, right? To guide and to learn from and to, have to run 5 scenarios for things. So that's for sure one of them. I think the other is, and I think I've always been good with the team, but actually having weekly time now where we tell me what you learned. Was it a new AI thing? What did you test? What are we trying out? What are we all trying? Because there's so much so fast. And the problem is I'll end up spending so much money on trying resources if we don't get together and start to divide and conquer, because there's so many every day. Anyway, that's the other piece, is just making sure the team is learning, trying, sharing actively so that we can tackle this beast.
Kristina, did you do that formally? Did you introduce that to the organization and say, this is a time when I need everybody to educate themselves and be part of that? And then you gave them the infrastructure with different access and subscriptions like you were talking about. But
I felt like I needed to do that. I felt like I needed to give this permission to not be working on clients in a way, like I need, and to know that every week I'm going to ask you, so what did you learn? It also gives you like the team permission to say, hey, there's this training I want to take. It costs this much money. What do you think? Okay, yeah, you try it. And in, 4 weeks, please present to us what you've learned. Which is great, right? I mean, if you have really some people love to learn, and it's the best of everything to me, because how I judge success is, client happiness, client openness to communicate with us, team sort of conversations and feedback, referral. There's a lot of ways to judge it, but those are 2 real big ones for me, is how the team feels like they're getting and, giving and getting at the same time.
That's a great point. It kind of leads me into one of the questions I wanted to ask, is how do you measure success in Witmer Group?
Yeah.
And so just give us, from a metrics perspective, how does the organization approach measurement in general?
Yeah. So, from metrics, I want a certain, from a sales, there's obvious metrics for, talking to people and leads and conversations and things like that. But I want a certain element of, I'm having a hard time measuring this one right now, so I'll say it anyway. But having the when I talk to someone or when someone's engaging with me on LinkedIn, an understanding of what I do, which sounds so obvious. People think people know what marketing does, but I can't tell you how many conversations, and it goes off in this direction. And I have more conversations with people who I don't really know, who seem to know me because of some of the things that we're doing online, whether it's, the live streams or the conversations or the educational. So I'm judging broadly based on that, and that is a lot of video based and repurposing sort of these core ideas into things. But generally for metrics, referrals, team satisfaction, team involvement in our growth as a whole, like these are things that I measure and I look at. Referrals, and then there's one which I sort of hinted at, but it's client engagement. Clients willing to be in it, right? Not just turning over things but very high level people being involved in the growth. That is a success measurement for me. And it signals some things which maybe I haven't quite, formalized and documented it all, but it's a big signal for me is how involved the high level is.
Look, we appreciate the candor. Everybody is working on something, and if you say you've got it all figured out, you're lying. So that's helpful. Because I was going to ask you, like, how do you measure it? Right? Is it ad hoc right now, where you're asking the team, or do you have any kind of an ambient measure in place where you can kind of see that it's a leading indicator?
That's a good question. I mean, there may be something, secondary that I have, but nothing's coming to mind right now. Like I have goals for, when I share an idea for pure sales and, semi cold outreach, I guess, which is LinkedIn. But I do feel like the things that are happening on LinkedIn with my personal brand are shortening that cycle to conversation of a yes or no, not necessarily yes or no. Do you want my service, but do you need something like this? Because it's a barrier too, right? Is really understanding where someone is at. Can they afford it? Are they ready for it? Whatever it is. So I feel like I'm shortening that cycle to those conversations. And then as far as one that we're ramping up now is really client satisfaction and a willingness to give referrals and to push us out there. I need to do a better job with identifying some people, because then I have people will say, oh, I know them. And yes, of course, I will introduce you. So there's some things we're working on.
Well, that's super helpful. And the reason we ask those questions is because we know that, people love to pontificate, but we like to hear people who are actually in the throes of it and do the work. So, so thanks for sharing that. But now let's talk about, you brought up LinkedIn, you brought up the fact that things are changing at a rapid pace.
Yeah.
What do you see on the horizon right now in terms of marketing, and how is Witmer Group keeping up with that? And let's just talk about the pace of change.
Okay, absolutely. So and this is, I don't know, 5 years ago is definitely not where I was thinking. But so I think what's happening now is that you've got AI, you've got AI creating content, creating things. You've got a jaded audience that's oversaturated with all this noise. And so I think there's something special about the human flaws that are going to really break through. So I really think there's opportunity to get more snippets and clips and talking points from average people, CEOs, presidents, whoever the talking person is, that is not as polished all the time and is really sharing what they're seeing about marketing trends, what they're seeing about what's happening in their business, what client experiences, things that help them grow and raise their level of expertise. But I think that we have definitely pivoted this last year to saying, okay, how can we bring a face front and center in all of its human special ways, so that we can break through the clutter. And it's not that there aren't tons of videos, but there's something, and especially, SMB like owners and leaders. I mean, when you look at sort of the age group and things like that, like they're looking for something that feels real, and they don't even know why necessarily it feels real or doesn't. But, I just think there's something special, and I think we can capture that quickly. And secondly, I'll just say repurposing things, right? So if I talk to you, you tell me what matters, you tell me what happened, I can use that 30-minute conversation for 10 different things for you to grow your business. Oh, wow. Okay. Suddenly an owner's like, oh, I just have to give you 40 minutes and you're going to give me really good, real quality stuff. Yeah. Okay. It's a video, it's a snippet, it's a blog, it's an email, it's a Google My Business post, it's a LinkedIn, whatever. Like, that's where I'm focused the next year, is how can I repurpose and value your time, but create something more authentic.
That's super interesting, because so I was going to say authenticity is what I hear you saying. But that's kind of interesting that do you believe that for most organizations there has to be that human aspect? What happens to campaigns, right? What happens to brand communications if it's all about the 40 minutes with an individual?
So I think that the brand and the campaign, so the brand and the messaging, I'll kind of put that into a bucket, right? You got the brand, you got the look, you got the messaging, and let's just say there's 3 points we want to stick, right? For me, it might be that marketing requires consistency. That's one of them, right? So, and then there's 2 others. So whatever so let's say you're interviewing me, I'm trying to get talking points, but you're talking about how I helped a client. Well, how I help clients should tie into our 3 points. So you need to pull it all in together. And then visually, it's not hard to add frames and visually pull things in together either. So I feel like you're taking real content and you're just folding it into a campaign. So we have a campaign, let's say it's about content marketing, right? But the overall like higher thing is that marketing requires consistency, right? If you do it for 3 months and then you stop and you start again, you're wasting your time. So having that, it's like folding it into these pieces and just using
I think that's interesting. So does marketing today require founders, executives, individuals to be involved in it to show that authenticity and human side?
So, yeah, I mean, you know what? I'm just going to make a bold statement right now and say yes, because it's this whole year, it's been coming to a head, I would say, is that yes. I mean,
that is a bold statement.
It is.
I mean, I think it's really, really smart to go ahead and call it, for what it is, right? Because as AI is going, we have the classic statement, the medium is the message.
Right.
Well, if everything in the media channel is completely filled with, AI, and we can see that and we understand that, then there has to be some humanity brought to it. I think that's a super interesting point.
Yeah. And I was, there's a client I had 5 years ago, and I fought him all the time about this, but it was that whole LinkedIn personal post versus a company post, right? And I think there's a way to use them together. But even LinkedIn wants the person, right, more than the company. Like the channel
is built for individuals. It's not built for companies.
So I mean, you can't fight LinkedIn. You can't fight these huge platforms in the way they work. And then you think about YouTube, and YouTube has shorts now, which are so great. So there's just all these opportunities you have to take advantage of. I definitely think it's what's needed, but I think it doesn't have to be so time consuming and scary. I think the key is to have a partner help them lock it down, but also, you also have to be willing to not be perfect. Like if you visualize, I don't know what it is, there is a rawness to video and conversations, but most CEOs, they could talk about whatever, right? And so, and they can share a story, right? Or a sales lead can share a story. Like most of the time, it just needs to be a process, right? It just needs to be handled and then put into process. They're not thinking about it anymore.
And that's so interesting. What you're really talking about is this nexus point between a company brand and a personal brand.
Yes.
How do you help a company go through that in understanding their personal brand, the individuals in the company? How do you build that? How do you structure that? And how do you make sure that they don't deter from the company's message?
Yeah, I think it's important to define the company brand and look and everything as much as possible first, and really solidify that, because then what you can do is you can have the the CEO, whoever it is, work within that, like they're an extension. They're going to have personal causes and things they care about, but if they care about the business, they should be somehow on the next layer of those things, and those core messages should be their messages as well. If marketing requires consistency, that's our clients have to understand that in order to succeed. I certainly believe that, right? So I have to talk about that in the things that I talk about too, right? And show how staying on point is better. And even you've heard that thing where if the minute you're sick of a look or a brand or something like that, or a campaign, is when your audience is just getting to know it. That's still true. So you've got to push back and you've got to say, I need you to stay in this box. When you have these exceptions, there's causes, you just have to give them room for creativity, and then go from there.
Kristina, this almost sounds more like public relations.
It does. My degree was in PR and communications, but I never really worked in that space.
Yeah.
But digital became such a PR thing, if you ask me. So I don't know what that means. You probably, I'll think about that actually. I'll guess.
Good. So let's talk about, do most of the clients that you work with, Kristina, already have a chief marketing officer, or is it typically run by sales and that's why you start from sales and move back to brand? Or give us a feel for the types of companies that you're typically working with.
Yeah. So actually, at this point, I would say 60% do not have a CMO in place.
Okay.
And so I would say a year and a half ago, I decided to have very different and very spelled out approaches to working with that. You have a CMO or you don't. You don't have a CMO, you're going to need something a little different. You're going to need someone to come in and say, some things that are happening. You're going to need someone to push back on certain things. You're going to need someone who can look at your sales goals, your business goals, or whatever, and sort of work alongside with them. So that's that part. And then the other part is,
so it's almost like a fractional CMO role.
Yes, exactly.
And Witmer plays that role.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Helpful.
And then the other piece is a CMO. There's two types, but one is a CMO dedicated to marketing and the strategy and supporting the sales team. But they just don't, they can't, you need someone who can either write and design and edit the website. I mean, you just have that team that you don't have, and we're all very scalable, like up, different skills that we make that team. And so that's a piece that we have as well. So
you become the practitioner to the strategic
like execute whatever it is and they're typically driving all the strategy with just a little bit of, oh, hey, did you see this? Or, hey, did you try this kind of feedback?
Okay.
So, because they're so busy, it's hard. I mean, and you can see when they have strategy down or not. So as long as they've got that covered, then you just fall in line and support that.
How do you know if they have strategy down pat? Like what's the thing that you look at and you go, they need to have it?
They share the goal. They share it with you, right? I mean, they share something that looks a little messy. It's not a PowerPoint per se. It's something a little grittier, and I mean GRID, like a grid. Like it's something very tactical, and it works with their strategy. I find you can see something that they've thought about and to execute, and they're collaborating with sales usually. Like there's some conversation they're having with sales. Now, I've seen people not be really allowed to collaborate with sales well, which is never a good thing. And you can kind of see that because then marketing is driving goals, but they don't seem to feel the same. So
That's helpful. And when do you, at what percentage of time are you the first agency that an organization has ever hired? Because you know the old adage, right? Never
Yeah.
be somebody's first agency.
I know. I used to be like, oh, I love to be the second. It's like the best. I mean, plenty times, I would say. Plenty times. So, but, and I've had people leave and come back, actually. So that's fun, too. And it's a different way. But definitely, it's half. I would say half and half, like 50% are usually new, like brand new is the first thing. And then others have, and sometimes they've worked with a person, right? And that's very different. Like because it's all over, they could have been an expert or consultant who was doing certain marketing functions, but they never worked with someone with the sort of rounded skill set. So that's really different. And I wanted to say something like the trickiest person to work with title, I will say sometimes, is the head of marketing and sales, because almost always they are really only doing sales, but their expectation, it's just a very tricky game of internal politics, usually not much related to us, just how you approach it, how you come across, because if you're doing head of sales and marketing, you really don't have, I guarantee you don't have time for marketing. You just don't.
So in that scenario, how do you get around that? Like, do you bring in the CEO founder? Do you play a fractional role to balance them in marketing, or what do you recommend?
So,
because I would imagine a lot of organizations have a chief revenue officer or sales and marketing, and they have a strength in one or the other. So how do you guys help?
I just find that title, usually the expectation is that they're going to drive sales, like very directly. And so that's why I think that happens, is that role is just always gets, not necessarily their preference. They may love to, like, you can tell, I work with a lot of people who love to get involved in how something is designed or how some things look, because they really do love it. They have a passion for it, but they may be focused on sales and things like that. So it's not a trick. It's just real. Like, I like to talk about sales enablement, which is marketing to me. So how can I help you sell, right? It could be the quick infographic you're going to send after call number 2. It could be the email that sets you, like, so that's when I think that's how you establish credibility. You give real value, and then you can start to add in other things as trust is built. So sales enablement, it's the word, it's a great word, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I work around executive enablement. Mm-hmm. And so the difference between, like, one of the things that we make really simple is, are we handling a fire? Is this something foundational? Mm-hmm. Or are we looking to the future?
Smart.
And you have different approaches for fire, foundation, and future, right? So that's part of it is just giving a simple framework that people can understand.
Right.
And so do you find that if you can change the head of sales and marketing's perspective, that makes the bigger impact? Or do you have to change the founder, CEO, leader's perspective first?
I think that you have to, it depends where your relationship is, or how good your relationship is with the CEO or the head of the business. But I think often that and this sounds horrible if I say it, so I feel like they don't know what they don't know. So they don't want to rock the boat with sales too much. They want to let it, especially, depending on what stage it's in. So I feel like they're not going to just go in and, like, you must work with this person, you must give them whatever, So I find that if you can find ways to, with the CEO's support and sort of whatever, how can I help you with sales right now? How can I help you with that? What happens is that forces me to create the messaging guidelines, the core pillars of content, the brand guidelines, if they don't have it. Like with a small business, they don't always have a document that says, here's the fonts we use and here's the colors we use. And if they don't, they have like a blue and a gray, like, well, maybe we need an accent color for some things we want to do. Let's establish that. And a lot of times I can just say, here it is. Are you okay with this? Yes. Okay. And it gets created, where in my old 15, 20-year ago world, that's a 6-month creative director experience, and I'm not saying that's bad. It's just for small businesses, they move at different paces. So it's just different.
Well, and it's also, I have always found that the CEO founder's role or president's role is to define the brand from a cultural perspective and values perspective, not necessarily the color and the brand ID.
Right.
But if they can get on board from that perspective, then that gives enough parameters that somebody else can then communicate that in campaigns or spread that and disseminate that through the sales force. So that's just what I have found to be successful.
No, I would agree. And I feel like I'm just much more confident now to say, if there's something you don't have, I'm just going to, with the knowledge I know of you, or ask the questions I need, and then I'm going to create it and I'm going to ask you to approve it. Like, if you want to change this in 6 months or a year and one of these message pillars is not right, that's okay. But I need something. I need something for the team to rally upon, and I need something that sales sees. This is why we're saying this. Like, I need something. So,
that's a great point, right? Being iterative and that feeds that authenticity. It's about speed and pace. So that's a really smart. A lot of things that I focus on is like, just, it's not necessarily the strategy as much as it is the execution. Do the work. Right.
Yeah.
And start learning. So that makes a ton of sense. And to have somebody that they can, be able to look to and go, look, get me 75% of the way there.
Yeah.
That's a pretty huge benefit.
Yeah. And it's funny. I've seen companies where we worked with some people for a very long time, but we force some of these things to be created. And then like a year from now, a designer or they're printing shirts or who knows, whatever, is asking for some of these things. Like, oh yeah, here it is. Like it was never not there. I was like, well, I did this.
It was never not there. That's pretty great.
It's foundation, like you were saying before. So
yeah. So Kristina, if I'm looking at, I'm running a company, I got a couple hundred people, I got a sales team, I got a marketing team, I'm starting to get, some work going, but I'm recognizing this authenticity issue, the connection between sales and marketing. I need to take it to the next level. I'm also recognizing there's all kinds of automations that can take place and things I can improve. So that's a huge, wide ask. But if I were to say to you, what should I focus on first, and what should be on my leaders list in the next 3 to 6 months?
Yeah.
Not for the CMO, for the CEO.
Yeah.
What should I be considering and have on my leaders list?
Yeah. So I really think that you need clarity across the entire business and any partners you work with about what your core messages are and what you look like and what's important to you. It's not hard to lock that down. You just have to do it. So once you have that, then you need to start creating opportunities to grab people in the pipeline. And it's very different now, right? People are doing so much research on AI. They're still doing Google search. They're doing other things. Like, look at the pipeline, and you need to have something to speak to them at every stage of the pipeline. If they're researching options, what can you offer them? So these are lead magnets, right? These are campaign ideas. So you need to lock down all of these things. Once you know what you're saying, gives people resources along that pipeline to sales so that you have that, like, so you can start building this nurturing approach. And then start looking at, okay, during sales, how are you sort of winning that over? Because then once you look at it from, the very beginning to the very, actually after you close, that's your brand is becoming solidified, and you're seeing if there's issues, you're seeing if you're missing something. But you just have to start, put something out there that helps people before they're ready to talk to you. That's probably the concise way. If you don't have something to help someone before they're ready to talk to you, you're missing out. And
so, Kristina, do you go right to that? Like, does Witmer Group go, look, let's put information out, or do you focus on let's look inward first? Like, where's your starting point?
So
Are you a trial and error, or are you a get the strategy right before we do anything?
Well, I'm definitely a trial and error person right now. I just think that you have to be. So I feel like you learn so much so fast that it's much easier. And a lot of times when I work with people, they don't have anything, right? They have a website, like they have things, they just don't have anything working for them further out. And the trick about content is give me something to talk about. A little, let's talk about what you're doing for clients. Let's talk about what CEO thinks about this, but let's talk about this tool to help you convince your boss that you need these dollars, like whatever it is. Like, let's think of tools that we can create for people, so I like to do those quickly, because I would rather roll out a new lead magnet or downloadable thing every quarter, because after a year or so, we can drop the worst performing one and then we can think about what's next. So usually there's nothing created, and I like to get going on both at the same time. Like, quickly, 3 weeks, let's dive into who you are, what the message is, and let's start right then starting to create something.
That's really interesting. I like the trial and error perspective, because so many times, and I'll be honest, that's not my approach. Like, my approach would be, I want to standardize the positioning. I want to know what the brand stands for. I want to take the values, and to your point, sometimes those things exist, sometimes they don't. But I like the perspective of get it in market, and don't fall in love with each baby. You got to start working through it.
Yeah, and there's so much data, you can learn so fast. I just, I'm sure different people have different approaches, but when somebody doesn't have anything sort of out there moving for them, I feel like having something, and I'll be honest, how this may be sad too, but having a resource is half the value, if not more. It's kind of like a subject line of an email, right? If nobody opens it, what does it matter what you had inside the email, right? And I'm not saying just put junk out there. There are easy tools to create checklists and resources and things that are very unique to your business. So that's
an interesting point. That's a bridge between sales and marketing that makes a ton of sense. That makes sense that you would focus on the lead magnet, right? Because that gives the sales team a tool that they can use to be able to, she can put that in their email. He can introduce that after the first meeting. He can, so there's lots of value in getting that link right.
Absolutely.
Okay. So listen, this has been incredible. Very helpful, Kristina. We're obviously going to put your contact information in. I would highly recommend you as somebody that people can reach out to, especially when making that bridge between sales and marketing and early stage. Are there any parting moments of wisdom that you want to pass on before we wrap up?
No, I appreciate you. I really enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate you. We had some real statement moments, which I really did appreciate. Like, it's time to sort of go out there and try some things, and don't delay too long. So and I think the visible brand of a person within the company is probably rising to the top of things that are most important. So
I thought that was a huge takeaway, and I would recommend that individuals do understand that they have to play a role to be human. That is such a we talk a lot about human assisted technology.
Yes.
Even with AI, there's a human element that makes the technology work. Absolutely. And marketing is the exact same way. But I think you brought up a really interesting point, that it takes on a different level of prominence right now. So I hope everybody got that, in addition to some of the other gems that you shared. And so thanks so much for being part of the Leaders List.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Great conversation.
Thanks, Kristina.